Alright, YouTube. Congressional Republicans should be ashamed of themselves. You probably have no doubt heard that the Republicans in Congress, both the Senate and the House, have taken the initial steps to repeal and replace Obamacare. But what they didn't tell you is that the primacy of the bill is actually to increase the federal deficit in the budget by 10 trillion in 10 years. The Republicans have passed a budget that will increase massive amounts of debt. The hypocrisy is they're the ones that accused Obama of doing this. So when it comes down to it, there is nothing different. We cannot differentiate between the Republicans in Congress and the Democrats in Congress. A neocon is a neo-lib is a congressman. It's all the same here. I hope Trump doesn't sign this bill. But this is being pushed through the public by saying it is the first step to repeal Obamacare. It is hard to give credence to the ideology that Republicans are fiscally conservative and they care about the monetary policy of the United States. We cannot believe this if in Congress they do the complete opposite of what they preach. It's time for them to start adhering to what their constituents want, adhering to what the American people want, and that is fiscal prosperity. That is a balanced budget. That is to bring down the national deficit and the debt. It's that simple. But they're not doing this. They're not doing this at all. Their actions and the actions of Donald Trump, or the alleged actions of Donald Trump, that being that he doesn't give a shit about anyone and he's a racist, is going to be a catalyst for a cataclysm of violent events. There's already rumors and theories that on Friday during the inauguration that the protests might turn violent. This is a smokescreen by the Republicans in Congress. That's all it is. It's a smokescreen to attenuate the disdain that people have for Republicans and Democrats in Congress, for the congressmen and senators in general. That they say, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, that they will not pass any bill that adds to the deficit. Well, when you add a bill that proposes 10 trillion in new debt, I think that kind of contradicts what they have said. So let's expand on this now. What's going to happen after this? If they can use a state of duplicity to hide the true primacy, the essential component of the bill, if they can pass it by saying, well, this bill is essentially used for repealing and replacing Obamacare, what else can they hide in bills to do that? Maybe they're going to increase spending in other areas, but they will say, no, this is going to remove Obama's executive orders or some of his executive order actions. If we do this, this will help. But hidden in the bill, you're going to see this increases the budget by blah, 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 blah. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. This is going to make America on a destitute path. We are essentially becoming a third world country. And nowadays, and this is primarily true with millennials, is that, and a lot of it's to blame with the media, is that we don't look as debt as an issue anymore. We don't look as the deficit as a serious situation. But the aspect of a positive fiscal policy is essential to achieve American sovereignty. We need fiscal policy, we need fiscal conservatism if we want to help our kids in the future. Because a country that owes everything in debt is not going to be able to completely sustain adequate welfare for the American people. It's horrible. This is happening every year. It doesn't matter who's in Congress, who gets elected in Congress. It still happens. That's why we need term limits on Congress. We need to remove these people, these pro-spenders. We got to get them out of Congress. Term limits on Congress. Or what they could do, which they won't, but what they could do, and what Trump could actually do, there is one way that the Republicans and Congress in general could balance the budget even after passing this idiotic budget of increasing the national debt by 10 trillion. What they could do is they could dismantle the Federal Reserve. We pay the Federal Reserve roughly $500 billion a year on interest payments. That is not what America could do. We could do what's similar to the Greenback Law that Lincoln did in the Civil War. That is where America can print its own currency debt-free, meaning interest free. Therefore, we don't have to borrow money to pay for our budget. As of right now, this $10 trillion, a big part of it is because we have to borrow that money from the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve charges us five shit ton of interest. I think it's 1,133% interest. Go check out Bill Still. He will show you the statistics, but I can't remember. But it's up there. $500 billion a year. If we would print our own money, we could simply pay off our deficit within a year. So the issue with this though is the Federal Reserve is part of a constitutional amendment. So to actually dismantle the Fed, we can do a few things. One of them, this is what Trump could do. Trump could reinstate JFK's Executive Order 11110. And this gives the U.S. Treasury to print their own currency notes, which would bypass the Federal Reserve, which means we don't have to borrow money from them, which means we don't owe them interest. This would work. And Trump can do this. Trump can do this using JFK's executive order. Why? Because JFK's executive order was never officially unsigned. President Johnson threw out the order, but he didn't actually cancel it. It's still active. And even if it's not active, I believe that Trump could actually sign an executive order that says all revenue budgets, all revenue-based bills passed through Congress will no longer be borrowed from the American people and from the Federal Reserve. Instead, the budgets passed will be printed by the U.S. Treasury Department. He can do this, and this would mean that there would be a kind of a dual federalism between the Federal Reserve and America. It should cause some issues with respect to interest rates and some kind of fiscal impact, but he could do this, and this would save the American government multi-billions and billions of dollars, and by default, it would save the American taxpayer money. Hopefully, that he could do that as a provisional stage until we can actually dismantle the Federal Reserve. We have to end the Fed. We have to end the Fed. It is so imperative that we do this. But until we do that, we cannot keep on making these dumbass bills that we pass that says we're going to increase national debt by $10 trillion. And then we're not going to try to hide it. We're not going to pass it with a state of duplicity. Basically, we're deceiving the American public by saying we need this to repeal Obamacare, but don't actually look deep into it, because when you do, you're going to see things you don't like. Ron Paul voted against this. I love it. I'm so glad, or not Ron Paul, Rand Paul. I'm so glad Rand Paul did. Ron Paul would have been a great president. I think Rand Paul would have been a great president as well. Too bad Ron Paul didn't make it. But the cards were stacked against him. Republicans in Congress, you are being frickin' retarded. Do not keep doing this. America can't. If you think this is going to help you when the election happens coming up, when your 2- and 6-year terms come up, you think people won't forget about this national debt, you're wrong. And you know what? If you do uphold this kind of behavior where you just put America more in debt every single minute of every single day, then you don't deserve to be a representative of the people. You don't deserve to be in Congress. And I'm done.